All right, what's up? Rare, not live episode, rare hotel desk aesthetic, lots of rare things happening. So, normally the show is like 2 hours and I'm talking to people in the chat and I'm kind of casually doing a lot of stuff, things like that. But I thought I'd kind of try and do the opposite right now. I'm pre recording this, because I'll have hotel Wi Fi tomorrow, so I can't depend on that. But also, the show is on the exact same time as the debates, and I can't really pretend that I'm going to be hardcore competing with the national U.S. presidential debate. So I thought I'd just record it, post in the afternoon. People can watch it before or after or instead of, if you're that kind of person. That's cool. So what I want to do right now, I kind of just want to jump right in, and instead of taking, the long amount of time and like kind of casually going through things, I thought I would try the opposite and just try and pack it in and just hit the ground running and see how far we can get in like an hour. When I initially started the show, I thought it would be an hour, so let's see how far I can get in an hour. Normally it takes 2 hours, but let's see how far I can get in one. And on that note, what I wanted to do, so I'm in this hotel, and I was like, I could set up my paint, set up everything. This desk is probably like $35, so if I ruined it, it probably wouldn't really be a big deal. But I thought it would be cool to change it up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use like a normal drawing pen. I'm going to use tools that are pretty easy for people to pick up. Sometimes I wonder if anyone's going to go out and buy like, $200 worth of paint based on the show. But it's pretty easy to pick up a drawing pen. I got a little watercolor paper right here. And for colors, if you watch the show, you've seen this before. But these are watercolor pencils. So all that means is they're like normal pencils, but the pigment in here is water soluble. So when you hit it with water, it turns into watercolor. And that's what we're going to do right now. And in terms of style, what I want to do right now, what goes really well with the watercolor pencils and the ink is, it's not going to be too much different than what I normally do, but I like to sometimes do a very sort of like informational, like symbolic thing where I'm really just emptying out what's in my brain onto the paper, not really thinking about it too much. So that's what we're going to do right now. Try out some, different visual things that have been kicking around in my head for the last few weeks, I guess you could say. And on that note, what I'm going to do right now, I'm just looking at the screen just to make sure the lighting is all good. I have a different lighting situation, but I think we're all good. Yeah, we are, right? Cool. And are these dots on my screen or are they on the page? I think they're on the screen. Let me just make sure really quick. This is very professional. Yeah, they're on the screen. Cool. Alright, so what I want to do first off is I'm going to start at the bottom and kind of build my way up. It's kind of naturally the way things go. And with the drawing style that I'm going to be doing, again, it's not that much different than my normal stuff, so if you've seen what I normally do, you're not going to be like crazy surprised or anything. But when I'm just drawing with the pen, perfect. What I like doing sometimes is playing with the lines, create different spaces, and open up different kind of windows into different areas. So what I'm going to do right now, I put this shape down here. I guess you'll figure out what this is in a second if you can't tell already. And I'm going to throw down this space up here. Cool. And I was kind of looking at the screen just to make sure you can see what I'm doing with the pen, so it came out a little wiggly, but it's not a big deal. Just going to kind of go with it this episode. I'll throw down this little ear shape over here. Give this person an earring because I'm going to make this a girl's head down here. Since I'm going kind of quicker than normal, I don't know if I'll do 1 or 2 in this hour. We'll just kind of see how it goes. So I'm going to kind of standardly throw down the hair shape that I normally use. A standard V shape, get these stripes in here. And I'm going to even put in a little bun over here. Just to kind of break up the visual space, like she has her hair up in a bun. This spiral going on right here. Boom. Perfect. And let's see, for the eyes, I've honestly been kind of feeling this thing, especially for what I'm going to be doing in a second. I'm going to have one eye closed, with just the line like that. I'm going to have one eye open like this. She could be winking, could be having one eye turned inwards, as we might say. Throw in the little nose right here, and you can probably tell now that I'm having this space down here be a mask at the bottom, actually. Because it's kind of like clinical and like a little weird, but I was out to dinner with a few people the other day, and I was just noticing how the masks like framed people's faces, and I actually thought it was kind of cool, so I'm going to use it for this picture right now. And standard kind of female style, I'm going to come down with these shoulders right over here. We'll kind of address like what we want to do with how her frame meets like the rest of the page in a second, but for now it's cool. And you can tell, if I was making like a graphic or something, I'd probably like, sketch it out and be like, oh, do I want her to have a pointy face or a tighter face or tall? But, for something like this, we can just kind of go for it, like I said. And what I really wanted to do is use the space right here of her mask to maybe just drop like a pattern in, or I kind of have two options right now. I could have this be like a window, like it kind of opens up into another space. That would be kind of cool. I could throw down like a horizon right here and put like a sun and maybe like a path or something. I do things like that a lot, so I'm going to try and take it in a different direction. We'll probably use, if we give her like a halo or space around her face, we'll make that like windows into different planes and different scenes and things like that. It's kind of a cool visual trick. But for this one, honestly, I'm kind of torn. I really just want to kind of drop in like a pattern or something, but it's a little bit too big. Like if you look at the whole space we have, it's a little bit too big to just have it be like a random pattern. So I feel like it should be something kind of visually interesting. So I'm going to compromise with myself a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw down this diamond shape in the front of the mask right here. Cool. And we'll put something in there, and then we'll make the rest of it on the outside a pattern. And just to kind of break it up from the rest of the picture and show that it is like cloth or kind of a different texture, kind of a different plane, I guess you could say, from the rest of her face. I'm just going to throw down this pattern with dots. I'm probably not going to use dots anywhere else, at least not on her face, so it kind of will visually signal that we're on this like kind of other plane. And I'm just going to go for it, throw down this little pattern right now. When I'm doing kind of this straight drawing style, it is kind of cool tapping into different patterns, because in order to make them look natural, you really have to just like commit fully. You can kind of imagine if you look out at like a windswept field of grass or any kind of natural pattern, even like rocks, like on the edge of a creek. I was at a creek this morning. Your eye can like instantly pick up on anything that is amiss. Like a field is kind of a perfect example. If you had a big field where all the grass is like swept with wind, then if there's an area where someone was like lying underneath the grass, or if there was something hidden in the grass behind it, you'd be able to see it. It would stand out as like a defect from the rest of this like perfectly kind of oddly, it's a little paradoxical, kind of like a perfectly chaotic pattern. So whenever I'm doing something like this, you kind of just have to like lean in and just let it kind of spill out of the pen as you're doing it. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm not even really thinking about it too much, honestly. I'm just kind of going with these little shapes. I'm thinking more about the flow than like the actual things that I'm drawing. Sometimes if I draw a pattern like this, I'll throw in like little flowers or some kind of subtle motif, but I didn't really do that there because I wanted to just use this as the release from like the rest of the visual space that we'll be creating. So it's kind of just a random pattern. Could have made it like a garden or something like that, but I didn't. And I actually like how that looks a lot. Kind of just wanted to see how like the visual plane of the mask would like go against her face, because obviously I'm not normally drawing things like that. And what I'm thinking right now, I want to kind of draw like a lot of attention here, sort of away from her face. So I'm going to throw in these little circles around over here. And what am I going to put in the center of this little mask area over here? I guess the pattern I chose is kind of like a garden, so it'd be cool to play with that a little bit. Maybe I'll push the kind of garden thing. So that is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this diamond that we have, and I'm going to take this little sort of bump motif that I deployed around the outside. So 1, 2, 3. But then for this fourth one, I'm going to come up. We're going to have it release into like this kind of flower shape. I guess maybe subconsciously I was thinking flower, girl, garden, kind of all goes together. And let's see, it should be closed or open. If it's open, it's going to be kind of tight, so I'll make it this closed flower. And that gives us some cool symbolic wiggle room later, because then if we have another open flower, we can make them the same color. It'll kind of read together. It's kind of perfect in a way. Put these dots around here just to make sure it's kind of all married together. And that looks pretty good to me. That looks pretty good. I want to bring some of this like visual density down, so what I'm going to do I'm just going to kind of narrate what I'm doing, so I thought it'd be cool to just go straight window into the picture making process. There are some things I want to talk about that have been on my mind, but get a little deep into the picture first. I'm also wondering how far we can get in an hour. It's kind of cool doing it like tight style, you know. So I'm just gonna throw down this sort of like necklace over here. It gives us a little room down at the bottom because then we can put something on the necklace. Obviously, kind of do that all the time. And yeah, just go in with the I can't really tell what I should do. I kind of want to drop a rose down here. I've been using that motif a lot. I was going to use a lotus flower, and I was like, you know, let's medieval it up a little bit. Perfect. Come around. Nice. That looks good. Soon I'm going to be on the page of like, oh, I used the rose too much, but I'm not there yet. And let's kind of have her in sort of like a dress, I guess. We'll have this sort of clothing come down over here. Depending on how we handle where she meets the page, you know, we could have like a trim on the top over there or something. I'm not really sure how I want to play that one. For some reason, like the normal thing I draw is like women, I guess. Probably could muse on why that's the case when we have some more time. Anyway, so we have this kind of nice like circle situation going. So yeah, I'm going to drop her into a tight halo. I could make it really big, but I don't know exactly what I want to do with the space all around here, so let's kind of come around. And when you're drawing like this, you don't have to worry too much about it being perfect. Part of the reason why I wanted to just hit the ground running and do like a tight, kind of quick drawing episode is, so see, it doesn't look perfect, but you know, we'll put some trim around it. It'll be totally fine. Is I did the video game episode, not video game, but I did the video game controller episode before, and someone hit me up afterwards, and they were like, you know, for me it was just something random. I thought it was something just cool and kind of like off the cuff. And they hit me up and they were like, hey, you know, that was a really cool one because you made it seem really like plausible, like I could like get that and just do it, like, you know, the way you were talking about how you like put it all together. So I thought that was cool. So I kind of want to bring that element to drawing. People do DM me and say like, oh, you know, I started drawing, I started painting, you know, because I was watching your stuff, and it's really awesome. So I thought we'd keep kind of simple drawing style, kind of just show like the bare bones of like what I'm thinking about when I put something together. So speaking of that, keep it moving. So we have this halo right now, and when I drop something like this down, I am thinking two things. So what the inside trim is going to be and what the outside trim is going to be. We didn't leave too much room, so you know, maybe we'll put something in the halo behind her, maybe we'll just make it a color, but it doesn't really matter right now. So for the inside trim, I like to have something that interacts with the negative space in an interesting way. What I mean by that is, I'm going to grab this piece of paper right over here. So let's say we have, you know, this curve right over here. Here's a perfect example. Let's say I did this as the inside trim, this kind of like bump pattern. I'm going to hold the pen so you can see what I'm doing a little bit more. This is kind of a perfect example, because once I put this in, I think your eye can either read it one of two ways. Maybe this, like this kind of flower petal motif, is the active space. So you can see it like, oh, it's this active space, the flower petal, that's leaving this negative space back over here. Or you can see it the other way. You can see it as kind of this like bite motif that just so happens to leave these bumps on the inside. So I think that's kind of cool, and let's kind of play with patterns that have that sort of element to it. You also get it if you use something like this. This is almost a better example, actually. If I come in with these spiky bumps right here. Because I think for this one, your eye really does read it like this is the shape that just so happens to be leaving this negative space on the outside, but you can kind of see it both ways. So I like to have something that kind of punctures into the space in kind of a cool way. And what I think I'm going to do, since I'm just kind of going for it right now, is I'm going to use this kind of like, it's not really like a wave pattern. I don't really know what I think of it as, but it's this trim that has these bumps coming up. I saw this in a piece of Asian art, and then I saw it in a piece of medieval art too way later, so I was like, alright, it's part of the pan-human, transnational aesthetic psyche, so I'm going to put that in my toolkit. And I just really think it kind of moves the eye around the space in a really nice way. And you can see, you know, if this was like a finished, like super professional final graphic or something, I would be thinking about little details. Like you can see right over here, I actually did make this one pointy, kind of by accident, and then these are more bumpy, so once you get going really hard, you can kind of customize it a lot, but I think that'll be good for us. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that, actually. And then on the outside, there's a lot of stuff I could do. I don't really know how I want to play it yet, so I'm going to do kind of a safe bet and do these like rounded, like lateral bumps. It's kind of how I think of them, actually. And I just chose this because I didn't want to lock us in too hard to a style. There's certain patterns I have where once I drop them in, I'm like, oh, boom, we're in like Celtic world, or we're in like illuminated manuscript world, or we're in, you know, certain patterns are kind of like spices where once you drop it in, that's like the flavor that you're working with, period. But I didn't necessarily want to do that here. And I'm going to play with the density a little bit, and I'm going to come back and put these kind of like double petals around the outside. I've said this a bunch. If you've watched the show, you've heard me say it before, but the density is really the main thing you want to keep in mind when you're doing a drawing like this. And by density, I mean the areas of like super concentrated visual information versus the areas of sparse information. A lot of times if you do a drawing, this is like the me encouraging you to draw episode. A lot of times if you do a drawing, I'm just going to kind of imply there's some like back here, even though it doesn't really line up. If you look at it at the end and you're kind of like, yeah, this is cool, but I can't really tell why it's not really like popping off like I want it to. Normally it's because you don't have one area that's like denser than the others, or you don't really have like a strong focal point, probably I would say is like the most common way to diagnose your drawings. And for something like this, that would be symptomatic of like uniform density. In case you can't tell what I'm talking about, you can imagine if I, you know, see how dense this pattern is. If I came back here and put a similar pattern, you know, put one on her shirt, put one on the outside, all of a sudden it's like, you know, like a newspaper page. It's just like writing. Everything's just like flat, you know. So you want to make sure you're not doing that. Anyway, other stuff I'm thinking, just to sort of narrate my thought process, is I could come in around the outside in between these bumps and put in like a circle. What I would really do if I was pushing the density thing is like, it would be really tight if I came in and put like these pluses in, like these little crosses in between every double bump, and then came back and put a circle between every cross, and then I could put a dot between every circle, and you'd really feel it kind of visually fade out. But I'm not going to do that because I don't know what I want to do with this space on the outside yet. So I kind of want to leave my options open. If I get these floaty elements, like if I put those pluses in, all of a sudden then if I go to color it, I got to like work around these pluses, and I got kind of a whole situation going on, which is not what I want to do right now. And speaking of the density thing, I want to do something with her halo, but I don't want to start like cramming stuff into this tiny space. So we'll just make it like 3 layers of color. I'm just gonna, said I wasn't gonna use too many dots, but I actually am. Just gonna throw down these layers in the background, and then we'll throw some color down on her. Kind of decide where we want the rest of this to go. Aesthetic wise, I'm definitely thinking about fall colors, because it's fall. Does that need any explanation? And I guess we'll start on her mask, honestly. If I'm going hard on the fall colors, I mean, her mask should be red, right? Oh, you know what else I wanted to do? So even though I have this bun up here with her hair, I'm still going to throw some hair of hers down in the back. I think it just looks good. It'll get me kind of spreading out that hair pattern a little bit more. I don't know if girls actually could have their hair up and in a bun and all that stuff going on, but in a picture it's fine. So, let's just keep it moving. We're going fast. It's good. So I got this pale red, and I'm just going to throw it down in her mask. I can't really tell. I kind of have 2 options. I could color the background red and then leave the trim in the front white. That would be kind of cool. Or I could color the features in red and leave the background white. You know, actually, now that I'm saying that, I feel like the red and white is going to be like a little medical with the mask. I want to kind of avoid that connotation, so we're actually just going to use orange. And in that case, let's just color in the features orange. I'm just going to go for it. And I really recommend people check out watercolor pencils. It's one of the coolest artistic tools that people don't know about. We used it a lot in season 1 on the show, but I haven't really busted it out since then. But it's kind of perfect for this kind of thing, you know? I'm in a hotel room, I can just set this up, and it's basically like I'm painting, but all I have to do is draw. So it's a nice little middle ground. And what I'm thinking right now, it doesn't really matter how this looks, because when I hit this with water, if you've seen before, it'll just turn into watercolor. So really all I'm thinking about is like strategically laying down areas of pigment, strategically laying it down. And I'm going to get all the color I want in on her mask at once. So when I hit it with water, it's kind of all like married together. Let's get the fall color thing going on. I don't know, is this going to be a good color scheme? Let's get the orange, yellow, and red. We are stepping into October very soon, so I think this will be appropriate. And I'll throw in... kind of locked myself in a weird place because I have this flower here, and like, I guess normally I'd make it pink. It's a girl, but pink is like a very not fall color, so we'll see how that goes. These are the problems we're going to be facing very soon. It's okay. We'll face them together. Cool. That looks dope already. And I'm going to throw down some of this yellow just kind of like randomly, honestly. I just want it like bleeding like in and out of the mask in like different ways. It'll also kind of push that like fall color situation. I might even throw down a little red and just get it like mixed in. That's the cool thing about watercolor is the watercolor pencils. You can get that kind of like messy, frankly like kind of chaotic look, but secretly you control it before you kind of press the button and let the floodgates go. So it's actually way easier to control than watercolor. Throw on these patches over here. And I'll just hit it with water. Let's see how it goes. Throw on some red. Just kind of arbitrarily throwing it down. Looks really good. And I guess yellow flower? Let's go with this kind of cool yellow. Let's just go for it. And like I was saying, I got this idea when I was out to dinner the other night. Especially the first time I went out to dinner the whole time of quarantine. It's the first time. I don't know if that's true actually, but it felt like the first time. It was the first time with random people. And it was funny because people got to talking about like masks and all that stuff, and I made a tweet about it, but someone was like, yeah, we should just like arrest people that don't want to wear masks. And it was so funny because I feel like I've isolated myself so much from like the real life culture war stuff. You know, I really just live it like on my phone, like when I want to. Like I take out, this looks really dope right now. Sort of like fall tie-dye almost. I really feel like I just like live it on my phone when I want to. I suppose you probably could be watching this right before the debate actually, which is funny. So just kind of reminded me like, you know, when I used to live in New York and like a big news story would break and like on my way to work I'd be like, oh my god, they're going to be talking about it. And I'm going to have to like talk about it, and like, you know, someone in one of my tweet comment sections said like, yeah, it's like we're all like preparing for these like cage matches we like never asked for. It's kind of how it felt. All of a sudden I'm at dinner with this person and she's like, yeah, if you don't want to wear a mask, like you should just like be arrested. And I'm like, do I tell this person? Like, I mean, I wear a mask. I don't really care that much, honestly, but obviously I'm not trying to take it that far. Cool. This looks really dope actually. And let me get this yellow going on. I'm even like tease it out a little bit. I kind of wish I threw down a color in the background of the mask over here. I mean, this little like diamond in the mask, but it's pretty cool actually. It's pretty cool. Just keep rolling with it. I'm gonna give her a hair color. I'm tempted to use brown, but I want to keep like the color flow going, so let's use Venetian red. This looks pretty good actually. Let's use this color. I'm going to throw this down pretty dark because when you're working with the watercolor pencils, it kind of typically has this like washed out feel. Not in a bad way, but I want to see how much I can get away from that, how much I can really push the color thing. So I'm going to just throw it down kind of dark. It's also the thing with the black lines in the color. The black lines tend to make the colors look kind of washed out. Again, it's not a bad thing, but it's just something you kind of got to be aware of. Perfect. I'll kind of just let it fade up, push like the spherical nature of this like hair bun she has as much as possible. Let's just throw that down. Let's just get it going. What else has been on my mind recently? Didn't do the show last week because I had medical stuff going on. Not really going to talk about that too much. It's just like personal stuff. It's not very interesting, honestly, but I actually did have a very like aesthetic medical moment. It's funny, I have these like real life moments and I'm like, wow, that's really on brand, I should like tweet about it, but sometimes I don't. But I was in the hospital. I've never been there overnight, but I was overnight there, and this nurse came in. It was like 2-3 in the morning, and she's like checking some stuff, just like I don't even know what, like papers or like random stuff like that. Yeah, this looks pretty dope. Nice. And I had this book on the table, so I'm just gonna keep working while I'm like talking to you guys. And she had this book on the table. I had this book on the table. I had this like hospital bed. It was very weird. It made me feel like I was in one of those like movies about like being in a hospital. I had this like whole room to myself and stuff. And I had this book on the table that was about Mu, and I think we actually talked about this when I did the St. Nicholas episode 2 weeks ago. But it's basically this like sort of other Atlantis, this theory about like ancient civilizations, kind of like being like colonies of each other. You know, it's kind of like a ancient history bleeding back into the past, Atlantis kind of thing. And I was reading the book for like creative reasons. I don't necessarily subscribe to that theory, although I do think a lot of like weird, somewhat heretical things about like ancient civilizations and stuff. But I was reading it because I knew it would be crazy and give me a lot of like crazy ideas. Like it was talking about bisons and buffalo being from Atlantis, and I was in the hospital trying to distract myself, and I was like, yeah, this is really great. Anyway, so this nurse, finds the book, and she's like, oh, like, what is this? Like, what are you reading? So I'm like, wow, how do I explain to this, like, normie girl that I'm, like, like what I just told you, like, reading this book about, you know, ancient civilization. So I kind of told her, and I kind of, like, put it in the framework of, like, yeah, you know, I'm really into, like, religion, mystical, weird stuff, and, like, I didn't say faux, sort of, like, alternative views of history and stuff. And she's like, oh, cool, you know. And we started talking about religion. I had a bunch of like religious books out too, because that's what I was reading while I was in the hospital, obviously. And it was interesting because she was telling me she was raised Baptist and like Pentecostal, and that kind of caused her to like get really into science and like kind of like turn her back on it in a way. And I feel like whenever I get in that kind of situation, I like to talk to people about, you know, sort of like the historical aspect of Christianity, like that I think most Americans, at least I can say, don't really know about, you know. So it's pretty cool. So I was telling her about it, you know, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of more into like, I know some people that watch the show are Protestant. That's cool. I kind of see where everyone's coming from, but you know, if I'm going to talk to someone about something they don't know about, it's kind of cooler. So yeah, I was like, you know, I was telling her about like theology and like, you know, she was raised Baptist, so she wasn't reading like, you know, Augustine or anything like that, and it was pretty cool. And I had this moment where I was like, wow, it's like 3 a.m. and I'm like, this nurse is like drawing my blood, and I'm literally telling her about like, you know, Rock and Sand by like Josiah Trenum and like Orthodoxy and like Catholicism and stuff. And it was kind of interesting because I feel like also sometimes people like that, they a lot of people like have never, I feel like a lot of people have never met someone who's like into religion from like a I like reading books perspective at all, which sounds like really dumb, but I think a lot of people, especially if you're someone like that, like she's like, oh, like I believe in science, like I'm a science person. You know, it's kind of like what we meme about on Twitter, where it's like, I'm sure she wouldn't say this, but thinking that religion is mostly like, you know, superstition and people kind of needing a crutch in life and stuff, you know. So I think she was like really kind of intrigued in a way, and she was asking me all these really interesting questions where she was like, oh, you know, my dad got really into it because, you know, I could tell he needed like somebody to explain the world for him, you know. Do you think religion like inherently has like a cultish dimension to it or no? And she was asking me all these like really interesting questions. And it was pretty cool. It's a very like weird aesthetic moment where I'm in this hotel room looking out over like, I can actually see the mountains from my hotel room, which was also really cool. And you know, talking to this nurse at like 3 a.m. about like historical manifestations of Christianity. Just a very weird on-brand moment. I don't think I successfully converted her, but maybe I opened the door, or at least gave her something interesting to think about for the rest of her like overnight shift. Alright, so I'm throwing down this like halo color right now. Let's just go full orange. Eventually we'll have to open up some other colors, but I think this will be good right now. Cool. Otherwise, it really took me out for the rest of the week, man. It's kind of interesting because it made me like super tired and I didn't get like any work done. And give me a lot of time to think about stuff. I was reading, I really don't read as much as it seems like I do because I'm always trying to get the graphics and art situation going. So I read most of The Orthodox Veneration of God by St. John Maximovich. That was a really cool book. It's an Orthodox book, but it applies to other things too. And that was pretty cool. He was talking about like veneration of Mary as kind of like foundational for. I'm gonna grab a different red for these like petals on the outside of. It's Let's get a darker red. We're getting into October. We can get some like dark red colors going on. He was talking about like veneration of Mary as like foundational for Christianity, and he was saying like whenever people like rise up against Christianity or want to like subvert it, they strike at this root that is like Mary, because you know it was like in her, like in her womb, literally. That this is what he was saying. I could be misphrasing this if this is untheologically sound, so don't judge him based on what I'm saying. But what I got from it was he was saying like, you know, in Mary's womb, you know, Christ's human and divine natures were merged. So it's like that's like where it all not started, but you know, I'm sure he phrased it more theologically accurate. But he's like, you know, that was like pretty seminal. So whenever people want to like strike at the root, they strike at this like moment, which is kind of like the genesis for a lot of you know, Christianity, basically, that being Mary herself. So I thought that was really interesting. Anyway, speaking of pictures of women, it's kind of rapid fire. What else has been on my mind recently? I kind of hit like a wall with the Moo book stuff. I couldn't really tell how much I should keep reading it. I'm kind of at this like juncture where like I really love reading like crazy schizo stuff, obviously, like hi, in case you've like never checked me out before ever. But now sometimes when I'm reading it, I'm like, you know, I could be reading something that's like actually advancing my spiritual life in some way. So I couldn't really tell. Like I was really enjoying it, but I was like, you know, how much am I really getting from this? Like I feel like I should be reading like Seraphim Rose or like something. So if you watch the St. Nicholas episode, it kind of all goes together, because in there I was talking about, you know, fantasy versus like, you know, reality in terms of lives of the saints, how I enjoy some things like the Golden Legend, which is like these almost like fantastic and like fairy taleized lives of the saints from medieval times. But Seraphim Rose was saying, you know, it's just like fantasy. You know, you should be engaging with like the saints as like real people, not this like fantastical stuff that like isn't really real. It's like true in like a Jungian sense, you know. I'm not saying those stories aren't real, but you could probably get what I'm getting at in some way. So yeah. And I'm throwing down this alternating red and white pattern for her necklace. So that would be kind of cool. This looks pretty dope. And you can see when you're going like this, you know, there's even this part over here where like the colors kind of spilled together and made this little outline, but the accidents almost make it cooler, so that's why we're just going to keep chugging along. Speaking of that, let's keep it moving. So I got the pen. This might be a different pen even, but whatever. And I got to figure out what I'm going to do with her frame over here. So I have kind of two options. Could have it come down and just, you know, tuck it behind the rose in some way, but what I think might be more interesting and what I'm going to do is, like I said initially, I like to play with like how the spaces open up into each other and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this line and I'm just going to tuck this back like that. I think that's kind of cool because, you know, her dress and her body is obviously like a positive space, like that is something, but then it kind of becomes the background. It kind of messes with your eye, like what is this? Like she's like folding backwards, so that's why I decided to do that. Perfect. Looks awesome. Let's just keep it moving. I feel like a big part of my mind recently has been like landscapes and vistas and things like that. So I'm just going to kind of open up this space behind the halo. It's going to lay a straight window right here. Just like that. Boom. I'm going to come across, make sure it's kind of at least close to the same latitude. Just going to open up this other window over here. Perfect. I think it should be dry, but I don't want to put my glove right over her face. Boom. Perfect. And let's see. Well, I'll put you know what I'll put down here? I'll kind of just do the drive that I did today. So I'll throw these kind of mountains back here. It's Colorado, I guess. And right now, I'm in Kansas. So I'll throw this line down over here and just put some wheat and stuff like that. And actually on the way out here, the moon was in the sky during the day. It was really sick, so love the white moon there. And you kind of get what I was talking about before, where sometimes I like to just make a picture where I'm just kind of emptying my mind and laying out the things I've been thinking about. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. The mountains are really blue, So I'm going to throw down this kind of periwinkle blue. Darker one in the front, lighter one in the back. And then we'll just go straight blue sky. And since it's watercolor, I'll be able to merge these two blues together. They really should be like almost the same. Perfect. And for the ground, Colorado, the vibe I got, it's kind of like brown and green earth. So I'm going to throw down a little bit of this olive green too. Perfect. Actually is exactly what it looked like. Let's see, where's my brush? Cool. Perfect. Yeah, I really got such a dose of like the big sky situation when I was out here. Really made me think of like, we talked about it a little bit 2 weeks ago, but it really made me think of like all the Central Asian, Mongolian, Tibetan stuff that I've always looked at before, because they have all these like sky deities and even like sky gazing practices where they'll just like stare into the sky and stuff like that. And being out here just really made me think of that in a different way, because the sky is so massive. I mean, what's the state slogan for Montana? Big sky country? Tell me about it. I'm not even close to there yet, but I definitely can definitely feel that a little bit. All right, in Kansas style over here, let's just lean in, make it like a straight wheat situation. I have the orange. Sometimes when you're driving along, some yellow will like reach out from the orange, so I'll throw that down. I'm just gonna lay the sky down behind her too. Here I'll make the sky on the top a little bit darker. Then I'll lay it down over here. Perfect. Where's the brush? Perfect. Let's see what else has been on my mind while I've been out here. Kind of the rapid fire catch up. Just the landscapes. Thinking about what I want to do when I get back. Been working on a lot of art in the sketchbook and stuff like that. But honestly, just some downtime was good for a second. I feel very refreshed and like ready to get it going again. Oh, dude, the yellow here is so nice. Perfect. We're gonna have to do something with this space down over here, but I really don't know what. I could. Maybe I should just lean in and do the kind of rose thing. Maybe I should just get the roses going. That would be kind of nice, like fitting in here would kind of marry with that. Let's just do it. Perfect. Nice. Just gonna throw these in here. I guess the other kind of like interesting part of my trip, since I'm gonna post this before the debates, is you know, I was out here and like I met up with a few people and oh, that looks so good. Perfect. And I did post about it, but it was interesting because someone asked me like, hey, you know, do you have any articles or anything about like why it would be good to like, you know, why it's bad to vote for this person or why this candidate is bad, you know? And it was so interesting to me because like I posted about this again on Twitter, so maybe you saw, but I just feel like my whole worldview is so characterized by like thinking about like the epistemic divorce of worldviews and how everyone's obviously like, I'm red team, so I think this way, or like I'm blue team, so I think this way. That it was so interesting that someone asked me like, hey, you know, like why would I vote for this person or why wouldn't I? It was almost like mind-blowing that anyone would be like, hey, what team am I on? Like, I'm not really sure. I just found it like really fascinating. And I was talking to this guy, and yeah, he was kind of like slightly turning on to like skepticism of general narrative of things, just like in the most general sense. And it was really interesting because he was asking me like, you know, where do I go to like get good information about like what's really going on or like, you know, how things really are and all that stuff. And it was so interesting because like it's so hard to recommend stuff like that to like a normal person, because I feel like everything is, you know, it's almost like the accurate situation is so extreme. You almost need to find someone who's like sugarcoating it to like walk people into like, you know, how things like really are. So it's kind of fascinating talking to someone who's like totally outside the kind of like bubble that I inhabit. Not an echo chamber, but a bubble. So I'm going to throw down these red roses, and it's kind of interesting because recently in my art, I've just been dropping in like so many roses, and it's such a tight vibe, dude. It's so good. It's almost like, if you put like one or two in, then, you're kind of floating in this space where like, oh, that's cool. But once you get like 50 in or like 70 into like one drawing, it has this like overwhelmingly like almost like visionary medieval effect. I've been doing some like heavily pattern based stuff, and there's a threshold you crack with the roses where you get like way more returns than just that you get with one or two. Perfect. And then I gotta start thinking about, let's see, how are we on time? We're doing pretty good on time. We're gonna be at an hour pretty soon, actually. Gotta start thinking about what I'm gonna do with this space up here, up in the top. So let's see. I guess we kind of at a juncture where, maybe I should decide like what I'm going for here, but I kind of don't want to. I kind of just want to let it happen on its own. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm kind of tempted. I got a few things kicking around in my brain right now. I almost want to put like a guitar neck or something up here. I was listening to like all this really intense like country and blues music on the way out, so I'm not really going to think about it. I'm just going to go for it. Throw on this kind of guitar head up here. Put this kind of fretboard neck coming down. I really like using musical instruments in pictures. I don't do it too much because it usually doesn't dovetail with the kind of subject matter that I'm doing, but there's something cool about it because when your eye sees it, it almost like has to think of the sound, and then you're already playing with some pretty cool situation where like you're imagining something by looking at something else. It's a pretty cool thing to deploy. Just gonna throw down some frets. And yeah, man, I was really feeling the bluegrass and country vibe while I was riding through plains and stuff. The bluegrass stuff was getting me pretty hard. Almost surprisingly so. Something about the songs about kind of like being alone. It's really awesome, kind of like American aesthetic in a way. So I'll throw in these strings. Doesn't really matter how it looks. Boom, just throw them down. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. And we'll just kind of go normal acoustic guitar. I guess the other main kind of like spiritual, symbolic thing that's been on my mind, I posted about it a little bit. I posted about a lot of this stuff, but I'm kind of just catching up with you guys and going off the cuff while I make this little picture here, is I had this dream, and if you're watching the show, maybe you read my thread about it, so I won't go into it too hard, but I had this crazy dream, and long story short, I was in this cab, and I ate something in the back of this cab. I thought it was like bread or something, and I got out of the cab, and I was in New York, and I had been transported to like this negative realm, this kind of like cursed city. And what I was thinking the whole time in the dream was that the person in the cab had like tricked me into eating like human remains, basically. Like I had been tricked into eating like this cursed food, and that I had then been transported into this like negative dark realm that was this like disgusting, like foreign, dirty, weird city where I couldn't read anything or talk to anyone. And in the dream, the whole rest of the dream, I kept going to different parts of the city that I knew, but the whole city had been like transformed into this like cursed realm, and I was like, oh, I'm trapped here like forever now because I ate that stuff in that cab. And it was such a weird dream, man, and it really shook me for like a few days afterwards. It really, really bothered me a lot. And I was really trying to figure out what it means, and I feel like it really made me reevaluate my whole like spiritual situation a lot, because I just felt like there was something about that like feeling of like, oh, I like ingested this stuff that I thought was okay, but it was actually like poison spiritually, and now I've been permanently transported into this like dark and like cursed place. And it really made me like take stock of like sort of like the spiritual path that I'm on, and like, that kind of thing, because I feel like a lot of times, especially because I don't really have like a home like theologically yet, it's kind of like I was telling my wife, I was like, it's kind of like I'll find this cup, and I'm like, well, I think that, theology wise, like maybe this person's wrong about like A and B, but everything else is great. So it's like this cup has like, one or two bad things in it, but I think I could drink from it. I think it's fine, And that was really interesting because I've been thinking so much about like having like a spiritual home and who I'm like getting my information from and like who's my like spiritual authority, and I really do play around with it. Kind of dovetails with what I was saying before about like Moo and all that stuff, where I really do kind of play around with this like fantasy element, this like fantastic fantasy in the sense of like fantastic, this like visionary, like as crazy as possible, like let's seeing what's possible and push it as far as we can, and all that stuff. And I don't know, the dream just made me think about it because I was like, what if I'm in like ingesting something bad during this process, and it kind of like messes with my soul in some like irreversible way, and it really messed me up, man. Like I didn't know what to do. Like I normally like pray using like the rosary and this like other prayer book and this other stuff, and I was like, gosh, should I stop doing that? Like I don't know what to do, man. Like it really like messed me up a lot, honestly. It really bothered me a lot, and I kind of got my head on straight after a few days. But like even the next night after the dream was the worst. So I was laying in bed and I was like, wow, I've never been like scarred like that by a dream before ever in my life. And my dog was sleeping on the floor. I was like, should I go sleep with the dog? Like maybe like, I was thinking crazy stuff. I was like, maybe like the dog will like, the dog, like has this good energy and will maybe like kind of make me not have that dream. Like it was crazy, man. It really bothered me a lot. Anyway, this is looking pretty tight. We're in kind of a weird visual space, but I'm just kind of rolling with it, actually. I think it looks pretty cool. I would like to toughen it up a little bit. Again, we're just kind of going off the cuff, just having fun here. So I would like to toughen it up a little bit, so I'm going to throw down a skull. Isn't that like the preeminent way to toughen things up? Like I said, we're not going for anything too serious, too crazy here. So I'm just going to go for it and throw down a big old skull in the background. I didn't think we'd do the skull thing, but we did. And I'm going to throw in the big skull eyes. Let's just go for it. And if they're big enough, that means you can kind of use them as a window into something else, which is cool. Got the big skull eyes. Oh yeah, that's a great call. Skull nose. Oh, perfect. A little Halloween energy going on right now. And let's see. Speaking of fall energy, I feel like I should throw down some kind of like fall tree situation. That's like the preeminent fall symbol. So actually what we're going to do, I haven't used this motif in a really long time because it hasn't been fall for a while. I'm going to deploy one of my favorite little visual things right now. I'm going to throw down the full tree over on this side. Make it kind of like a cypress tree. Cypress tree is symbolic of death in Renaissance art, so it's not really a cypress tree, but we'll give it the point like it is one. And then over here, what we're going to do is I'll make it a little bit smaller, the tree, and I'm going to make a bunch of leaves falling off of it. I think that'll be dope. Just have all these fat leaves falling off, fall style. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like that dream really made me kind of want to take my spiritual life kind of like more seriously. I mean, obviously, you guys probably know me if you're watching this. I really do think about it like all the time, but it just made me really think about it a lot, honestly. Think about it in a different way. It made me think about it in a different way because I was like, wow, like that feeling of being cursed and like transported into this like cursed realm was just so fucked. Honestly, sorry, it's the only word for it. It was just such a dark, cursed feeling. It was cursed. That was the energy that I got from the dream. I didn't anticipate talking about this, so sorry if I'm like unloading on you. And it made me think like, oh man, like I could like, not that I'm too worried about this because, I'm honestly just not. But I was like, oh, I could accidentally like, be led astray. Like it's been so long since I thought about that because I guess since I became Christian I was kind of like, not that I'm off the hook, but I was like, okay, I know I'm not going down the total wrong road anymore, but it really made me just kind of pause and reevaluate and be like, wow, I do have to be like kind of vigilant that like the whole dream structure, like I got tricked into eating something that was like really messed up and it like cursed me. I'm like repeating myself now, but I don't know, man. I might do a picture based on it, but I also just kind of want to forget about it. My dreams normally are, when we did the dream episodes, we talked about it, but they normally are kind of broken up into like obviously meaningful and obviously not meaningful, and that was definitely one that really stuck with me. Anyway, it's a quick show. Keep it moving. That's enough about that topic. Maybe that was interesting for you. If it wasn't, though, we're going to keep moving on. So I'm going to throw down this kind of fall-colored tree over here. Honestly, if we push the fall thing really hard, I could even throw down some pumpkins. I mean, maybe I should. should just kick into the full fall situation right now. For this one, we're not going to have any red. We're just going to start with the orange. Perfect. And yeah, when I get back home, I kind of do want to start checking out some churches and stuff again. I used to go to this church that I liked a lot, but I don't know. It's also a weird thing. C.S. Lewis talks about like shopping for churches and how like you really shouldn't do it too much. You know, it's kind of like this exercise in like spiritual aggrandizing yourself, where you're like, oh, is this church like good enough for me? But at the same time, I went to this one church and like I literally couldn't understand a word the priest said. Literally couldn't understand one thing this guy said. It was like this guy from India. And hey, that's cool. I like India, whatever. But like I said, I couldn't understand a word out of this dude's mouth. So like, you know, I tried really hard, but I'm not sure I'm going to go there for like spiritual counsel or whatever. Perfect. What else is on my mind? Kind of want to watch the Fatima movie that came out recently. It's kind of funny that pretty much the only movie I would ever be interested in watching came out during this like coronavirus time. So I loaded it up to watch it, and I was like, am I gonna pay $20 to watch a movie at home right now? Yes. I guess I could. Alright, let's start on these fall colors right now. I'm gonna start at the bottom because lighter is better to bleed into dark. So we're just gonna kick this up right here. Perfect. Nice. And we'll kick it into the red. Nice. Something about the fall colors, man. So awesome. This guy named Joseph Albers was a modern painter who he makes these paintings. They're just like squares. So if you saw them, you'd just be like, oh, it's like whack modern art probably. But it's pretty cool because this whole thing is like studying color and how color works. He wrote a book that I recommend to people all the time called On the Interaction of Color. It's pretty much the best book on like how colors work in art. A lot of pictures, really highly recommend it. And he talks a little bit about fall and how fall is like this incredibly like powerful time for colors. And he says the northeastern United States is the best place for fall colors, which is where I'm from, so it's really tight for me. I don't know how it is in other places though, but I'm really excited for that. It's such a beautiful visual time. I was making joke posts about white people being like empowered by fall energy, but I do feel like there is something real about that. I'm sure it's not just white people, but I feel like there is something real about that, like artistically. And okay, focus in for 1 second. Kind of got some options. Let's see. We're gonna hit the hour mark. We're gonna be there soon. I could, you know, if this was like a painting, I'd probably paint the skull in like dark. That'd be really cool, but it's not a painting. Should we just lean into the fall thing? Maybe we should. Maybe we should. It's kind of fun talking about like weird cursed dream energy. So let's just kind of lean into it for this episode. I'm gonna throw in some pumpkins in the eyes. Let's just do it. So yeah, I often talk about how, you know, part of the reason I like to draw from the seasons in art is Japanese art always draws from the seasons, and I didn't know this before I studied Asian art and stuff, but haikus, like the poem, like haikus, technically have to be about a season. It has to have like a seasonal element for it to be like a traditional haiku. It doesn't mean it's like a poem about fall, but there's like a whole like basically bank of like words that different classical like haiku poets can tap into to kind of indicate that it's like about a particular season. So like for spring it could be like blossom, something like that, something that's like tangentially related to the season. And the bank of words for fall is like way bigger than all the other ones. So the artistic kinship with fall basically goes a little bit deeper than you might expect. It's not just like a purely surface level thing. I'm going to throw down kind of yellow. Actually, I don't want to use yellow in the eyes because it makes me think of jaundice, which I don't like thinking about. So I'm going to throw down the red in here. Nice. Cool. And yeah, I think I pretty much hit the goal of this episode because, you know, I always have a sort of serious view of the paintings. Not that they're serious, but sincere, you know. What I do, I don't think of it seriously necessarily, but I do it sincerely. That was a really good blend right there. I like that blend of those colors. And sometimes it's cool to just, you know, take out some fun tools, do something that's totally chill and casual. something like this is something you can get into even if you have zero artistic ambition. Maybe you, I don't know, majoring in like engineering, or you're a culinary person, or you just do whatever. Something like this is just fun to like blow off some steam, and like it's very like relaxing, honestly. Kind of, it's a way to like engage with your thoughts in like a casual way. Get them out on paper, then you can forget about them if you want, or you can do something with them. Do whatever you want. I really want to drop this wine color in. I feel like this would be kind of dope, right? But I don't really know how exactly. I could just throw it in with the fade and like kick it up. Is that a cop out or not, though? I can't really tell. Let's just do it. So I'm going to throw in this magenta. Try and lock it into an hour. It's going to be an hour and like 5 minutes. So. Boom. Get this going up here. It has a nice kind of like smoky gray quality to it. But when I hit it with the water, I don't know if that'll stay that way. We'll see. Yeah, that really was exactly what this needed. I'm actually going to darken this up a little bit in here. Otherwise, though, what else is going on? It's kind of nice hitting these like rapid fire topics. Like I'm doing a podcast that I haven't prepared for. Honestly, man, the plane situation is just, I'm really stoked to do some art about that. Just something about a new environment like really tripped me out a little bit, and we talked about it when we did the St. Nicholas episode 2 weeks ago, but just new colors, new energy, things like that. Also maybe kind of reflect on where I live in a different way and start thinking about terrains a little bit more and stuff like that. I'm really also kind of intrigued by like the terrain of like places like Ohio up into like Pennsylvania, the kind of like hilly, foresty environment. So I don't know how it's going to affect my work. I have this book I'm stoked to read when I get back home. I have a ton of books I'm stoked to read, so I don't know if I'll actually read it, but it's by the St. Herman of Alaska Brotherhood, which is affiliated with Seraphim Rose, if you keep up with like weird stuff that people like us are into. That's such a good color, man. That was so perfect. Looks really good. Nice. And it's all about the Russian saints and how they're like drawing from the landscape in a way. And the back of the book says like, just how Africa's landscape affects African religious stuff. Russia's landscape affects Russian religion stuff too. And I thought that was such a cool idea and really fits with me being into like American religion and stuff like that. I forget if we talked about that 2 weeks ago, so sorry if we did. Okay, let's see. Pretty good, but I feel like I gotta do something with this space down here, with this little window right over here. What am I gonna do? It's perfect timing. We have 3 minutes left. I almost want to drop the blue in. Maybe I'll drop the blue in. Let's just go into... Oh wait, we didn't use this blue before that. We used this blue. Let's just fade it in. So yeah, this is perfect. Nice. So yeah, this will be the encouraging people to doodle more actively show. Nice. Sometimes people do send me pictures in my DMs. Like someone sent me like they were in some class in school and they were like doodling. And they were like, yo, I drew this because I was watching your show last night. And I was like, cool. Kind of like not to nerd out, but like you should probably pay attention in class. But that actually is pretty dope that you did that. Okay, nice. We'll kick up this blue in here. Yeah, this is perfect. And yeah, you can see this kind of like sometimes I do things like this in my sketchbook. Like I said before, just to say it more clearly, it's kind of a really cool way to like engage with your thoughts and stuff, Sometimes I even do it more informationally, like I'll literally have like lines connecting stuff and like arrows pointing to like other stuff and things like that. But yeah, that was really, really fun. Damn, it's cool to cram it into an hour. Should I take questions from my Twitter feed? Let's see, I posted online that I was going to do this, and I suggested if anyone has questions, if I needed them from the chat, I would poke in. But I feel like we're good. It's like perfectly an hour. Someone asked me philosophers that I like, but I don't really like philosophers. I like theologians. Someone said philosophers you enjoy in their works. It's a good question. But I can't really think of anyone. I really enjoyed checking out Wittgenstein back in the day, but it doesn't really hook into anything larger. Really, it's mostly aesthetic people and theologians. Semiotics, Umberto Eco. Anyway, that was good. It's a chat simulator. But all right, so I guess I'm going to wrap this up right now, man. That was really fun. Cool. So a little quick episode, drawing. I'm on the road. We'll be back to normal next week. I'll be back in the studio with normal internet, painting. Maybe kick into like ink or something. Maybe like geometry stuff could be cool. So we'll keep it moving. Thanks for sticking with Owen broadcast, visual, emporium, painting, show, situation during our brief absence. But we're back. And that's basically it. I'm going to wrap this up right now. So I hope you enjoy whatever else you got planned for this evening. Thanks for coming by, and I'll catch you guys next week. See you later.